Hi, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. We are doing another live stream. The topic is a continuation of a video that I did not so long ago, which I said I would do. I was very tempted not to do it because the first video didn't do very well, but it doesn't matter because I did in fact say I would do it, and I did write all the notes out, so it seems like an awful lot of waste of time if I don't actually do anything with it. So hence we are here. And hopefully the live stream is going to kick up. YouTube seems to be running a bit slow. The good news is I believe that Fred Hubbard is here. And if Fred Hubbard is in the live chat, that means we officially can legally start streaming at this present time. You will let me know if there's any problems with the sound. I'm just doing a sound check to make sure everything is working. I've made a few tweaks and adjustments to make sure things will sort of work out a little bit better than they normally do. I don't know that they necessarily will work that way, but that's the plan. Okay, so I'm just going to do a check to make sure my camera is working, and then we are ready to fire into this. I'm going to apologize right now. This is a complicated video. This is not like a simple video. And why is it not a simple video? Because we're dealing with upgrading animal companions. That's the reason why it's probably going to be a lot more complicated than some of the videos I've done in the past. So I do apologise for the fact that is going to be definitely going to happen. It's going to be complicated. I'm going to put the start time down in the description for those of you who want to get past all of the waffle and setup as people jump into the room and so forth. It will be down there, but you won't be able to access the live stream unless you have subscribed, hit the bell button, and turned on your notifications. Okay. If you do those things, you should be able to find the live stream. Now, the reason that if you won't find it is because I unlist all of my live streams. I will do an edited version of this live stream. It will get cut down in a few days and put back up as a shorter version. It will not include the Q&A or questions and answers, so I usually get rid of all of that sort of stuff when I do the cut down version, okay? Sound seems to be coming through. You'll let me know if there are any issues. I think it's all right. I was trying to get rid of the peaks and the hollows that occurred in some of the other live streams and a lot of the echo, because I had a bit of an echo going on. So if you haven't been part of my live streams, normally what I do is I have my notes. I will read through my notes and go over them, and I will present you with a bunch of slides. That just makes life easier rather than me looking down constantly. I don't have a teleprompter or anything like that. And not that I could even fit a teleprompter in this room. I don't think that would be even physically possible to do so. So grab a drink of water, some food, get comfortable, and we'll talk about animal companions. Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, because I always do talk about Dungeons and Dragons. I did promise this topic, and here it is. Upgrading that animal companion for Dungeons and Dragons 5e. I'm finally going to explain the process. So, how do you actually upgrade an animal companion or animal companions to stay relevant in combat for your players' characters when you're playing your Dungeons and Dragons 5e game? Here it is. There's a lot of stuff. Now, this is a checklist. It's a collection of checklists and tips for adjusting the animal companion. What I found when I was making my checklist is that I had already done this in the past, and there's always something you forget. So I figured that a checklist is probably going to be more useful to you, so that when you're doing it, you can just go through it item by item, step by step. So here's the first one. Your animal companions should have the same number of hit dice as your characters. So if your characters are level 4, then your animal companion should have 4 hit dice listed at the top of the stat block. And I already did a video on how to select your animal companions for Dungeons and Dragons 5e, and if you haven't seen that video, it would be sensible to go and watch that video at some point so you know how to actually select your animal companions. But that's the first step, is make sure that the hit dice are the same. So same number of hit dice as the character level. Okay, number 2 on my checklist is use animal companions with hit dice of D8, D10, D12 for combat. If you're going to put the animal companion into combat, you need to be using the D8s, the D10, D12. Any animal companion with a D4 or D6, you stick them in combat, they will not survive. They're more utility animal companions than anything else. So that's the number 2 on the list. Number 3 is keep the animal companion the same level as the player's characters. Yep, that's right, the same level as the player's characters. So as the players level up, say from level 4 to level 5, you need to increase the power of your animal companion. So you need to level or upgrade the animal companion so it stays relevant with them. Otherwise they will fall behind, they won't have enough hit points or won't be able to do their job properly. So a very important factor there. Okay, number 4 on the list, and that is you need to increase the hit points each level for the beast by the average of that hit dice plus their constitution modifier. So that means every time they increase in level, so if the animal companion needs to go from level 4 to level 5, you're going to increase the hit points. And what do you increase it by? You're going to take the average value of the hit dice plus the constitution modifier for that animal. Now, what are the averages for the dice? It's actually pretty simple. You will find them in the player's handbook, and you're looking for a D8 is a 5, that's the average, a D10 is a 6, and a D12 is a 7. Okay, those are the values you're looking for in terms of averages. Okay, next is number 5. You need to increase proficiency bonuses by +1 at these levels. So proficiency bonus increased by 1 at level 5, level 9, level 13, and at level 17. I often get these confused with the increases in ability scores, but don't. They are slightly different to that. So level 5, 9, 13, and 17. Number 6 on the list is adjust proficiency skills, saving throws, and attack bonuses. So if the animal has a proficient skill listed in the stat block, you need to increase those, okay? You need to make adjustments when the proficiency bonus increases, and often you will find that sometimes those skills will increase as well if an ability modifier has changed. Saving throws need to be adjusted as well with a proficiency bonus increase, and of course your attack bonuses should be increasing as well, because we will assume that the bite, claw, and whatever the beast is doing, that they are actually proficient with those tools or weapons, rather than not being proficient. That would make very little, no sense whatsoever. Okay, number 7. You need to increase one of 2 ability scores by +2. That's the ability score, not the modifier. I would start with Constitution and then shift to Strength when Constitution has been maxed out at 20. Now, why am I only selecting those ability scores? Because Constitution will keep them alive, give them more hit points. Really important if you're actually going to have an animal companion do anything other than die in combat. And the only other reason to select something like Strength is because most animals, their attacks are based off strength rather than anything else. Don't get complicated. I would not go jumping between things like intelligence, wisdom, charisma, dexterity, not unless it's really, really important to do so. Most creatures don't sort of operate on those that much. Those are the ones that are really important to actually increase. Now, when do you increase the ability score by +2? Well, you should be doing that at the character level, or in this case, let's say the beast level 4, level 4, level 8, level 12, and level 16, and level 19. That's level 4, 8, 12, 16, and 19. Number 8. What are we going to do at number 8? Our number 8 step is you need to adjust hit points when the Constitution modifier changes. So if you make an adjustment to your Constitution score, that will usually mean that the Constitution modifier will change. Therefore, you need to make adjustments to hit points. Don't forget to do that. I know there's a lot of things that can sort of trickle on from one thing to the next, but we're going to go through this like a checklist. Number 9, adjust the damage bonus or output. This is really the damage bonus rather than the damage dice, and your attack bonus when the strength modifier increases. So that's adjust damage bonus and attack bonus when the strength modifier for the beast increases. Number 10, Make sure to adjust ability modifiers when the ability score changes. I would often find myself making one change to one thing. When you change the ability score, it changes the modifier for that ability score, and therefore it might also change a whole raft of other things. But if you go through the list, you will eventually get to the bottom of it and find you have pretty much adjusted everything. Now, the last two things I want to talk about are not so much about the things you need to make adjustments to or modify to help upgrade your animal companion or your beast for your player's character. These are things that I would recommend more than anything else. So there are 10 steps to it as far as I can tell. Okay. Don't recommend transferring character class features or feats onto an animal companion, as they will become far more complex and powerful. There is an exception to that, and I would say that it doesn't make a lot of sense for some animals not to have dark vision. You know, the big cats would have dark vision, but yes, they don't have dark vision on the stat block for a lion or a panther, so that doesn't make an awful lot of sense. So feel free to adjust that. That's just their senses. And frankly, it makes a lot of sense, and it really, I thought it should have been there in the first place. But of course, if we do that, then just about everything has dark vision in Dungeons & Dragons 5e. Okay, the next thing is, make sure when the animal companion falls to 0 hit points in combat, you allow them to have a death saving throw, unless it is instantly killed by a single blow. Not the combined value of the blows, but a single blow strikes that creature and kills it outright. I've already done a video on how to understand instant death in Dungeons & Dragons 5e. I've already done a video on death saving throws for players' characters. The same thing should really be applied to your animal companion, unless of course you really want to make your life more difficult and ask a whole bunch of more questions from somebody on the internet trying to figure out how to solve that issue. Okay, now please consider this a basic guide that you can adjust and modify for your own Dungeons & Dragons game. It is not here as an absolute, so feel free to make adjustments. I have essentially given you the basics that are in the player's handbook and the monster manual, and that's just a guide for you to work by. Now, for those of you who want an example and want me to go through an example step by step showing you how to do each of these things, that's not this video. That would be another video that would come at a later date, provided enough people watch this video. But I find that animal companions are not a high volume or high traffic video content, but I still felt that this was an important video to make because people would find it useful, and I'm sure you will if you are dealing with that particular issue in your game. Now, if you found this video helpful, fantastic. Remember, I have a video on selecting animal companions for Dungeons & Dragons 5e. I also have a video on using animal companions as utility, making them really awesome in your game. I also have another video on how to try and fix the Beastmaster and that pesky animal companion problem that you have, since nobody seems to ever want to play a Beastmaster in your game. Now, I have hundreds of videos for players and dungeon masters that you would probably find quite useful. If you feel like checking them out, go for it. If you want to support the channel so I keep doing video content like this, you can check me out on Patreon, where you get the written scripts to all of my videos. So all of my notes go there, and you get access to the live stream, so you don't have to worry about clicking subscribe, notifications and all that sort of stuff. I also have an affiliate link to the book depository in Amazon, where you can buy stuff online. I get a small commission. I have a merchandise shelf underneath all of my videos. Otherwise, just watch my videos. That's fine too. Make sure to share, like, and subscribe. Hit the bell button to be notified when I go live and when I publish new videos, and that happens a lot. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Okay, I'm not gone. So I don't expect this to be a high volume traffic topic. I am happy to answer questions about pretty much anything today. As I always do, it doesn't have to necessarily be about animal companions and how to upgrade them. I know that's not a lot of people who are going to be using that kind of content, but I did feel like it was important to do it because there's not a lot out there, and in fact it's actually the concept behind it's actually pretty simple. It's just the step-by-step making sure you adjust everything that needs to be changed as you increase it in power. That's all. Okay. Let's see if my eyes are any good. If you have any questions, player or Dungeon Master questions, throw them out there right now. Otherwise, you know the story. When I get to the bottom of the live chat, I disappear and go and do some other stuff. All right, I think my eyes are sort of working with the glasses. We'll see how we go. Depends. All right, what do you got here, Fred? Animal Companions is a feature of the Ranger Beastmaster. If you have combat capable animal companions to everyone, you have devalued the Beastmaster. Okay, so Fred Hubber, I'm going to disagree with you. You've probably watched more than a few of my videos, and I do not think that it would diminish the value of the Beastmaster. I use or consider the idea of using an animal companion like using a hireling. The only difference is the animal companion should in fact be simpler and easier to use in combat than a man-at-arms or a sellsword or a hireling, which I've done a video on as well. Okay, so I don't think that it diminishes it at all or devalues the Beastmaster. What devalues the Beastmaster, full stop, is what's in the player's handbook, because it's not very good. Okay, if it was better, people would use it. So to encourage people to use animal companions, I think you really need to have an understanding about when you would use them. I don't think if you have a party of 5 or 6 players and they're all playing a character that they should start having animal companions. But if you have a group and you've only got 2 or 3 people playing in your game, it makes perfect sense to allow them to have an animal companion. Why? Because we would probably allow them to have a hireling or play 2 characters, rather than them having to deal with playing 2 characters, which is far more complicated. And I'm sure you would agree with me that playing 2 characters is much more difficult because it's vastly more complicated. Player characters are more complicated, right? So I don't think it's devaluing it. Okay, Sam, what do you got here? How's it going, Sam? Janchvik, mount counts as an animal companion too. So here's the thing. When I did the video on selecting animal companions, I said that some of them could potentially be used as a mount. Not all of them, because I didn't just select animal companions that were medium size or small size. I selected some that were large size as well, okay? But it depends on the type of animal companion. And frankly, it makes a lot of sense that they become a mount. But here's the problem. I don't think that necessarily a bear, brown bear or black bear, is going to want somebody wearing armor sitting on their back. Maybe walking beside them, they'll be happy with. A horse or a war horse makes perfect sense. You know, you can put a saddle on it. It's been trained for doing that. Makes a lot more sense. What's that? Really bothers me how, for example, horses are fragile compared to the characters that aren't level 1. So here's the thing. You know, one of the things I always got frustrated with when I was playing Dungeons and Dragons with another Dungeon Master is Fireball. Bam! Fireball would come in. At one point, you know, the players would all go down, or player characters, because it's not the players, it's the characters would go down from Fireball because they were like low level. And kill all the horses, would be dead as. All riding horses, all dead. And then I'm like, okay, all right. But we're leveling up. I'm getting stronger. And then you could take the brunt of a fireball eventually as you got to a certain point. And then, but the horses are all still dead. If you were riding on the horses, they're all still dead. And you know what I find interesting is that historically horses, an army would go through horses very quickly. They would die very, very fast in battle. So it's not necessarily something that is a bad thing. It's annoying because you have to understand that your horse is going to die often, and that for every soldier you might need like 10 horses, because every time you go into a battle, you're going to lose a horse, and then you've got to replace it with another trained horse. So it's just a natural process. So I don't actually think that it's any different to what the reality is of real life. Now, you might not want to transfer that reality onto your Dungeons and Dragons game because it is fantasy, right? So totally understand that. But again, there are ways of getting around that. If you don't want them to be too fragile, allow for a death saving throw, and that will sort of help mitigate the problem of the players constantly having to go and buy another horse from a stable or a horse vendor. Okay. Okay, what do you got here? Janjific. At level 5, you can reach even 50 HP with some builds, while your horse is 13 HP. Makes no sense. Yeah, I've already answered that question. All right, so Fred, what do you got here? I know you're going to have a comeback for me. Players that ride their horse into combat tend to have dead horses. That's right. DMs generally leave the mounts and pets out of combat if the players don't try to use them in combat. Pets are not companions. That's right. Pets are not companions. And Fred does make a good point. If you decide to take your mount or your animal companion or your pet into battle, it's going to probably get killed if you're not careful. And as a dungeon master, when you have a number of targets for your monsters to attack, for me, and this is why a lot of people who have played in my games would laugh when I start talking about animal companions, because they know that I've killed a lot of them, and I've killed a lot of pets as well. And I have always tried to explain to them, look, it's not that I dislike the animal companion or the pet so much, but that if I have the choice between putting the attacks and finding your character getting killed, or a pet or an animal getting killed, I will always prefer for the pet or the animal companion to take the brunt of the attacks that would take them out or kill them, rather than have your character killed. That's just how I see it in my head. They are the weakest link, and just like you as a player when you're playing the game, just as a player, the dungeon master is thinking, what is the weakest link? And if you've taken a soft, squishy pet into the battle, or an animal companion that can't take the full brunt or isn't armored up, so if the animal's not covered in armor like you are, then that's the target you go for. It makes perfect sense. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't use animal companions, and it doesn't mean that the dungeon master doesn't want you to have your animal companion or your pet. It just means that they are probably you're going to go through them a lot more. That's all it is. Okay, Janshvik, what do you got here? Fred Hubber, you can still be ambushed on a road riding your horse. In fact, at least 50% of all combats tend to be ambushes. Certainly that's how Dungeons and Dragons tends to set them up. And as we know with Dungeons and Dragons 5e, initiative is very important. Getting surprise on your enemies is very important. Makes all the difference, considering that most battles are anywhere from 1 to 3 rounds before it's all done. At higher levels that can change, but not necessarily. If you've tried to pimp out your encounter so that it drags on for a long time, it certainly might last longer than that. But usually, between 1 and 3 rounds, and that's it, and it's all done. And also, historically, horse was much more durable, and you would rather go for okay, so historically, I think we're going to have a disagreement on historically, because historically horses got killed a lot. There's a lot of dead horses. Small pets like cats and birds really aren't suitable for combat, which is why I don't suggest them. But again, something like a horse, if you're going to be using it as an animal companion, and your dungeon master is fine with that occurring, then you should be upgrading and leveling it up, and that will mitigate the problem of the fireball hitting them and destroying them outright. Can easily trample over humanoids. Yes, yeah, they have the ability to do a whole lot of different things, some horses. And one of probably the most sensible animal companion to have is a horse. Brian Lee, how's it going? Out of curiosity, what is a better animal companion for a sorcerer, an owl, a pseudo-dragon, or a cat? Okay, now when you talk about an owl or a pseudo-dragon or a cat, you're talking about utility, right? Because they're really not going to be suitable as combat. They just don't have the durability to survive, okay? I would say the best option is the owl because it flies and because it has flyby attack. Okay, it has flyby. Basically, usually you can't make attacks with something like a familiar. But if you have a look, if I grab the monster manual right now, because I do actually have it, I figured there would be a few questions regarding this. And we'll find the owl, because the owl is the one that I normally select if I don't want it to die constantly. Here we go. On page 333 of the monster manual. And I'm going to have to take the glasses off because I can't read. That's just too close for my eyes to be able to deal with. And we have here, it's got an armor class of 11. It has 1 hit point, so it's not very powerful. It's got a speed of 5 on foot, but it's got a fly speed of 60, so it moves really fast. But it's the standout feature is not the talons that it has, because it doesn't do a lot of damage. It's the flyby attack. The owl doesn't provoke opportunity attacks when it flies out of an enemy's reach, and that's really important. That means your owl can be flying in and out, doing 1 point of damage, maybe, if they hit, each round in your combat, and that's it. Not a big deal, as far as I'm concerned. Might take a little bit more time because you've got like another extra dice to roll and another thing to control, but yeah, again, I've answered your question, but as I said, not really a suitable selection for something like combat as such. Although it will stay alive, an owl can stay alive, unless somebody decides to shoot it, and they won't only have to hit it once and it's done. Hi Matt, how's it going? You are late, but that's all right. Pseudo Dragon of DM allows it is the superior familiar. Yeah, I think he's talking about animal companion. Pseudo Dragon. I know why you've selected Pseudo Dragon. I tend to not go Pseudo Dragon. Why is that? Let me find it. Let me find it and explain why I don't think the Pseudo Dragon is a better option. I thought it would be here, and I'm sure I had it. Or is it in the player's handbook? I'm looking in the wrong section, probably, eh? Yeah, Pseudo Dragon is the player's handbook. Take me too long to find it in there. For some reason I can't. Give me a second. I will be swift. Pseudo Dragon. Okay. Because if I thought the Pseudo Dragon was a sensible choice, here, this is the reason why I do not select Pseudo Dragon. One, because it's a D4. Okay, Pseudo Dragon, not a great idea. Yes, it has magic resistance. Yes, it has limited telepathy, which sounds all cool. Yes, it's got keen sense and all this sort of stuff. It's got a bite and a sting. But the problem is it's still only got 7 hit points, and it's a D4. Okay? Now, if you can look at it and think in terms of the equation that I've been giving people, that 2d4 plus 2, that would sort of indicate that would be suitable for level 2. Well, it's not really suitable for level 2. And even if it were, it will not scale up very well over time, as you have to increase its level. That's why I don't even go anywhere near the Pseudo Dragon. Numerically, to start off with, it looks alright, but later on it will give you trouble. That would just be my opinion. If you're going to use a familiar, then a Pseudo Dragon is a great option because it can fly, but so is something like the owl, okay, even though it's got 1 hit point. But I'm assuming that you're using these for utility, And Pseudo Dragon, for me, I don't know that it's necessarily the best utility option, just because it can't necessarily get out of trouble easily if it needs to. But flyby attack, flyby is the not flyby attack, but flyby is a really good feature for an owl. Okay. I've also found that a lot of dungeon masters don't allow the pseudo dragon anyway. It's like that, as soon as you start saying pseudo dragon, they're just like, nah. Hi David, how's it going? General question, not about animals. That's fine, David. I'm a new DM. After each room in a dungeon, I'm allowing my characters to rest as long as they want to heal and get back spells. Yes, okay, that's your question. Seems to be unrealistic. Is it a bad practice? Can I encourage them to move along even when down a few hit points? Okay, so David, what you're talking about is the adventuring day. And I can tell you now that the adventuring day has always been bollocks. It doesn't matter what version of the game you're playing, okay? If you allow your players to have their characters rest in every room, whether that be a short rest or a long rest, they will. Therefore, they will get a lot of their resources back. Therefore, every encounter they come across, okay, they usually have everything that they need to deal with it until eventually they use up all of their spell slots. And when all of the casters use up their spell slots, they will say, we want to take a long rest. What I tend to do with my Dungeons and Dragons games is if it's a dungeon or a tomb and there are still monsters or creatures within that location that would roam around, that's what we have things called random encounters, but it's actually a random monster or a roaming monster. It's probably a better, or a wandering monster is a better concept to understand it as, because random encounters can be something other than just combat. That's to stop people from doing that sort of thing. So have patrols in the location so they can't take a short rest or take a long rest. They should be having to leave the location, find a safe place, and then going back to the dangerous location to continue exploring. That's what a sensible person would do in real life, so you can transfer that over to your Dungeons and Dragons game. What that will force them to do is they won't take quite so many short rests, and they certainly won't take them in the dungeon if you have wandering monsters or patrols, because you'll keep breaking that rest. So I would suggest doing something like that. You don't have to do it that way. In terms of getting them to move around with fewer hit points, usually that's a bad choice for a player to go and continue playing if they still have resources that would allow them to have max hit points. So I usually try to encourage my players to go somewhere else for the short rest until they finally use up all their hit dice. You can also force the issue by giving them time limits, where if they don't succeed, and you don't necessarily have to spell it out, you do not need to tell them that if you take too many short rests or too many long rests, you will fail this quest. Okay, that's up to them to decide. They have to make that decision with the limited information they have, rather than game it. Okay, so that they're always making sure they are alive. I've had many adventures where the players have taken long rests, short rests, their characters have all lived, and they failed the quest and they could do nothing about that. That's a natural consequence. Okay? But yeah, you can put time limits. You can have running battles. Running battles is a way of depleting players down so that they can't actually go out and take a short rest or a long rest. They just, you have one battle followed by another one quickly after. Okay, all right. Byron is liking Fred's suggestion. Pseudo dragon. Okay. Don't let the PCs rest after every room. Yeah. No. Unless the entire dungeon location is devoid of creatures and monsters and NPCs, then that's a bit different. Then they could do that because there's no more threat. But if there's still a threat in the area, then keep that going. Matt Nerdy, what do you got here, Matt? Warlock with a buzzard companion. Ah dear. You want to have a buzzard, a vulture. If they try to rest, there's wandering monsters. Yes, exactly. Fred knows about wandering monsters. He's been around a long time. He knows exactly what they're all about. Okay. Jankovic. Just increase hit dice and proficiency of a horse can be good balanced solution for higher level characters, so you don't need to have some weird creature to ride. Yeah, exactly. Here's the thing. As I said, with horses, I would only apply this if it's an animal companion that you're going to be using in combat. And the Dungeon Master is allowing you to do that. And again, as I said, I would not bother doing it unless the group is too small to survive, because Dungeons and Dragons is really built on numbers. You need to have 4 or 5 characters to actually be able to be successful. Otherwise, it's very swingy. Once you lose 1 or 2 characters, or 1 or 2 characters go down, then it's all up to one person to keep the whole thing moving, and that can be dangerous. Matt Nerdy, Wandering Monk Clan. Why not? Yes, let's go with that. I like monks. Okay, John, what do you got here? I'm not sold on this idea. It doesn't add as much diversity as the additional basic, what's that? Character would. Now, John, you don't have to be sold on it. That's why that's why I do these videos. This is just an option. You don't have to be sold on it, John. Yep. The only rationale that I have behind using animal companions over getting a player to run 2 characters is running 2 characters is complicated. And if you're dealing with new people, that's not an awful lot of fun. And it's actually, you're really not going to get one player to be able to play 2 different characters effectively. It's much easier for them to play just one character. As you know, as a dungeon master, when you start playing a scene out and you have multiple NPCs talking, and you wind up with one NPC that you're controlling talking to another NPC that you're controlling, it just looks like nonsense. And you wind up, they will fall up into the same, players will fall into the same trap as a dungeon master does when they have too many NPCs in the same scene that can converse in the dialogue. You wind up with that situation where you're talking to yourself, which is just crazy in a Dungeons and Dragons game. Okay, Matt. Are we talking everybody in the party gets a pet? No, we're not. No, I'm not saying everybody in the party, and I'm not saying just one person. Matt, I'm saying if your party is low on numbers, you may find that adding an animal companion might be useful, particularly if you've only got 2 players. And yes, then you would give everybody an animal companion. If you've got a group of, say, 3 players, you may give them all an animal companion, or you might only give 2 of the 3 an animal companion, because one of the players is playing like a wizard, and it's already a very complicated character as it is, because wizards are, or a spellcaster of some kind, such as a sorcerer, or a druid, or a cleric. So you don't necessarily have to give it to everybody. Okay, it's only there as a tool, and I always think of it as this: if you have something, you might find you have a group of 4 players, and really 4 players is probably good enough for the party. But there's one person in the group who would very much like to have an animal companion, and as long as the other players don't give a 2 hoots about it, then you could do that. So there's no hard and fast rule about everybody gets an animal companion or one person gets an animal companion. Do you know what I mean? It just depends on your situation. Oh God. Yeah, and here we go. Aaron, no, this is not the dinosaur stream. I marked down that topic. Okay, dinosaurs. I did. I marked down dinosaurs, but no, this is not the dinosaur stream. That will come in the future. I don't know how long that will take. Bearing in mind that frankly, I haven't used dinosaurs as an animal companion in my games ever. Or was it once? There might have been a once. I think it might have been a one-off. So I don't have an awful lot of experience behind it to talk to it just yet. So no, it's not the dinosaur one. Small dinosaurs could be pets. Okay, all right. If the PCs leave the dungeon to go rest, the inhabitants will find the what? The carnage the PCs caused, and they will rearrange their forces. Yes, or bring in reinforcements. They can do these sorts of things. It may be that the forces can't be reinforced because they've got a limited number of resources in that dungeon. But they can rearrange and set a trap for somebody who might come back. And I think that's what Fred is trying to say, is that you can rearrange what existing forces are living in the dungeon or currently alive in the dungeon and set it up so that when the players come back from their short rest, they're waiting for them. Okay? And that will change things. That will eliminate that I just want to have one encounter in the dungeon and then leave, take a short rest in a safe location, and then go back to the dungeon again. So that's a way of forcing an ongoing battle, changing the stakes a little bit. Tiny poisonous snake, pet. Yeah, okay. For those greedy little hands. Yeah, it's not really a combat machine, but yeah, you could use it in that way. Hi Dan, how's it going? Tips for role-playing sad and touching animal companion deaths. Question. Do you want tips on how to do that? So that would be a player thing. And as I've already said, that I would still encourage Dungeon Masters to use death-dying saves rather than to have the animal companions killed outright. But if they do die, then you go through the normal thing, right? When the goldfish dies, or the cat dies, or the dog dies, you get yourself a big box. You say a few prayers, get everybody together, you dig a hole, you put them in the box, you put a few flowers on it, you stick the box in the hole and you bury it, and you stick like a little stick with a name tag on it and say goodbye to your animal. If that's what you're after, Dan, I think that's about it. Okay? Yeah. But I'm not going to suggest that people start, having their characters bawl, or that they actually go through the process of a stream of tears coming down. Do you know what I mean? It's really up to you how you want to role play that sort of stuff. Yeah. Okay. All right. Moving on, Dan. Byron Lee, what do you got here? Top 3 monsters that I think would pretty much be a murder hobo encounter: gelatinous cube, giant worm, red dragon, and a beholder, unless the party is of high level. Now, top 3 monsters that I think would pretty much be a murder hobo encounter. I don't understand what that means. What do you mean? Because the beholder in Dungeons and Dragons 5e is a tame, wimpy creature in comparison to what it used to be. Beholders are they're pussies now. They're still dangerous, but they are much more like a pussy compared to what they were. In the past, when I was playing Dungeons and Dragons with older versions of the game, such as something like 2nd edition, but 3.5, you came across a beholder, you did not stick around. Okay, there was no, we'll fight it. No, you ran away. It's only when we started dealing with things like Dungeons and Dragons 4e and Dungeons and Dragons 5e, where suddenly it's like every monster you face, you should be able to kill because it's got a set challenge rating. And I just don't agree with that. I think there are some monsters that you should have to flee from. And if you decide to fight it out and you are lucky enough and smart enough and good enough and everything goes perfectly, you're able to fight it off and you might kill it and get its stuff. But chances are you find yourself your first encounter with something like a beholder or a dragon, like a great ancient red dragon, you would probably find you are fleeing, and then you have to wait and get the resources together before you even consider going back and trying again. And I tend to do this in my own games, that they will have encounters with dragons and they do not kill the dragon. If they don't flee, they may get wiped out, but chances are the dragon will flee and just wait for them to do something stupid and pick them off bit by bit. The gelatinous cube has never been particularly dangerous in Dungeons & Dragons 5e. And it's so slow. So, and I've talked about the gelatinous cube before in terms of monster tactics. It moves so slow, so unless in the first person who encounters it's going to may have a bit of a hassle, but they're probably still going to survive. And then everybody's just going to move away from the gelatinous cube and just shoot it from a distance because it moves so slow. So I don't know that I understand what you mean by that, because those monsters aren't that great anymore. Jurassic dragons would be entertaining to make some even more extreme dragons. Oh my gosh. I'm not sure. Do we need to make Jurassic dragons? Aren't dragons old enough as it is? Man, I wish they would publish more low-level celestials to make them sense for familiars and something. Okay, so you would prefer to see like lower-level celestial creatures or beings that could be used as a familiar. I think that kind of makes a lot of sense. That does make a lot of sense. We don't really have that. We're really using templates from animals and beasts and a few other bits and pieces that are sort of floating around. So yeah, it kind of does make a lot of sense. I don't know that we'll necessarily see that though. Okay, so before people run away, I just wanted to say that I've been talking with Wally DM about his puzzle book, and it looks like we will finally get an opportunity to talk to each other face to face, and I'm really hoping that will transfer over to a video or a live stream on my channel and his channel, and I think he wants the same thing. I'm still working. We are still sort of working through. It's more like a waiting game for Dungeon Class, for those of you who are waiting for stuff from Dungeon Class and me. But I had some ideas. It just depends how Gonzo feels about it. The stuff that we've done together hasn't done that well, so I particularly on their channel. So I feel like they may find that not a huge draw card if they don't get better numbers. And then I've also been talking with somebody else about a retrospective on the Lost Mine of Phandelver. So how the game played out for them and for me. And I think that would be quite useful for some people. So when people ask me, will I do more Lost Mine of Phandelver stuff? Yeah, but probably very different sort of layout than what I've done in the past, and probably would not just be me, because I feel like I've pretty much exhausted everything I can say. There's probably maybe a handful of things I could do if I really wanted to. Okay, what else we got here? Or if the party is a bunch of barbarians, they barbecue the dead pet. Yeah. Oh yeah, that reminds me, I did actually barbecue. No, I just cooked it up and ate it. Somebody's badger. By accident. Well, kind of by accident. So that happens. Thanks, Dan. I'm glad the advice was useful to you. Matt, lizard folk, everything is food. Yeah, that's true. What do you got here, Fred? My beholder Leah makes great use of reverse gravity. Wizard's gonna waste all of his spell slots in Featherfall. Fair enough. So David wants more Phandelver. Yeah, but it would be, like I said, it would be a very different format, the Lost Mine of Phandelver stuff. It would be, and when I say Lost Mine of Phandelver, I actually mean also Dragon of Icespire Peak, hopefully, and I also mean the Curse of Strahd. Very much the Curse of Strahd. I very much want to talk more about the Curse of Strahd. And there may well be a video called Problems with the Curse of Strahd coming in the future. It's been percolating through my mind. There may in fact be a video called Problems with the Death House, because apparently people believe there are problems with the Curse of Strahd, and there probably is. And, well, there is some, kind of. And, yeah, I suppose there are problems with Death House. There are problems with lots of different things, but, you know, are they problems that can be resolved easily, or are they difficult questions to solve? I don't know. We'll see. We'll deal with those as we come through this. Yeah. I mean, the lair for a beholder is pretty cool, but I still feel that the way that the beholder in the monster manual is just so tame. It's just so tame. Okay, we have answered all the questions in the chat. There are no more questions coming through. Oh, what have we got here? ESP, what do you got here? Super excited to finally DM Strahd. All right. Well, I'm hoping it goes all well for you. There is a couple of videos that I've done on that particular topic, and I do think that Lunch Break Hero has done a bunch of videos, but he's got a very different perspective on the Curse of Strahd than I do. I think his approach to the Curse of Strahd and the advice videos that he does are very, very different. So it will depend on, am I a better match in terms of what I have to say, or is Lunch Break Hero a better match compared to what is he a better match for you? So check out those and see how it goes if you have the time to prepare. What's that, Dan? Seriously though, Dragon of Icespire Peak videos would be super helpful. Okay, so I can tell you now that I really do want to start making those videos. The reason I have not been doing that is because I'm still running through the adventure. Like I've said it before, still running through the adventure, and my players watch my videos from time to time. Not always. The reality is that most people who I know who play Dungeons and Dragons do not watch my YouTube channel. And people who I know in New Zealand don't really watch videos on YouTube about Dungeons and Dragons. They don't do it. So it's usually not an issue, but occasionally if a title comes up and they spot it and they see it on Facebook, which they will, they might decide, oh, I'll go watch that. And of course, I've made a problem for myself by presenting that information too soon. So I can assure you, you will get videos for Dragon of Icespire Peak sometime in the future when I'm ready, on every location in the Dragon of Icespire Peak, every location in that book, that adventure. You'll have a breakdown eventually of any issues that I think need to be dealt with, and you will get an NPC video, sort of building them out and giving them a bit more mass. So those are definitely topics that will happen. So that will all come eventually. What's that? Critical Role LBR? I don't know what that means. What are we talking about here? I've gotten lost. The ones you've put out have been helpful in running it. Yeah, I think I've done a handful for the Dragon of Icespire Peak. Not that many. But I can assure you there will probably be twice as many videos for the Dragon of Icespire Peak compared to the Lost Mine of Phandelver, simply because the Dragon of Icespire Peak is, to my way of thinking, much more taxing on a dungeon master, let's just say. Much more taxing on a dungeon master compared to the Lost Mine of Phandelver. But then again, if I have my way, the Curse of Strahd will wind up having videos on that topic for years to come. But we'll see. And there are other adventures to sort of talk about that I have run in the past. I will also say that I know I'm a educational channel where I try to teach people who are players and dungeon masters how to find more resources, more options, how to play the game, how to run the game. But I guess I'm getting an itch. You're going to see some piss takes on my channel eventually because I can't help myself. There are things that I need to make fun of, and it alleviates the frustration that I have, and it's entertaining for me. Hopefully, it'll be entertaining for you guys as well. But yes, you will see a few videos that aren't necessarily educational and are more just me having a bit of fun. All right, so we have covered everything. LBR. Later. All right, see you later. Okay. All right, so let's sign out here. So wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, the night, the early morning, look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours, and hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.